Think about the last time you were in a meeting or a conversation and you let someone interrupt you, and in that moment you lost respect. You were being polite, you were being kind, you were waiting for them to finish so you could finally speak, and then they just kept going. And the moment passed. Your point was never made. Now, contrast that with someone else in the same room. The one who held up a hand and said, "Let me finish." Not rude, just firm. And somehow everyone leaned in. No one interrupted them. Why does that happen? Why does the person who is harder to access often feel more valuable? And why does being consistently kind, what we're taught is the highest virtue, sometimes lead to being taken for granted? This is the psychological paradox of social respect. And it's not about being cruel, it's about understanding a fundamental truth of human behavior. Your availability determines your value, and your boundaries determine your respect. Here's the thing we get wrong. We are taught that kindness is the currency of connection. Be nice, be helpful, be agreeable. And for a while, it works. People like you. But there's a hidden psychological threshold that most people don't see. Once your kindness becomes constant and unconditional, the human mind stops interpreting it as generosity. Instead, it starts interpreting it as a baseline. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. It's the same reason that exciting new purchase eventually just becomes part of the background. When people experience your kindness as a permanent state, they stop seeing it as a gift. They start seeing it as a utility, like electricity. They only notice it when it's gone. Boundaries, on the other hand. Boundaries create a different psychological reaction entirely. Let's break down what a boundary actually is. A boundary is not a wall, it's a signal, and it sends a very specific piece of information to the person on the other side. It says, "I have value, and my time, my energy, my attention, they are limited resources." Now, think about how the brain processes that. Evolutionarily, humans are wired to pay attention to scarcity. If water is abundant, we don't think about it. If water is scarce, our entire brain focuses on it. The same logic applies to social dynamics. When someone's attention is given freely to everyone, it's abundant, it's cheap. But when someone's approval is harder to earn, when their time is protected by a clear boundary, the brain assigns that person higher status. There's a reason for this. It's a cognitive shortcut. We assume that if someone treats their own time as valuable, they must be valuable. If they treat their time as something anyone can take, we subconsciously assume it has low worth. That's not cruelty. That's pattern recognition. It's the brain trying to figure out the social hierarchy so it knows how to act. Here's a simple way to visualize it. Imagine two fences. One fence is made of thin wire. It's easy to step over. People walk through it constantly. They don't even realize it's there. The other fence is solid. It has a gate. You can't get in unless you knock. Which property seems more valuable to you? That's the psychological mechanism at work. The fence doesn't make the property valuable, but it signals to everyone who sees it that the property is valuable. Here's another layer that most people miss. When you are kind but never set boundaries, you become unpredictable. Wait, that sounds backwards. Shouldn't always saying yes make you predictable? Actually, no. When you constantly give without limits, you eventually hit a breaking point. And when that happens, you don't set a boundary calmly. You explode. You lash out. You go from 0 to 100 because you've been suppressing your needs for too long. That sudden explosion. That's what people remember. And it creates anxiety in the relationship. Now, think about the person who sets clear boundaries early. They say, "I can help you with that, but I need you to ask first." Or, "I'm happy to listen, but I have to leave by 6. That person is predictable. You know exactly where you stand. There's no hidden resentment building. There's no ticking time bomb. Psychologically, predictability creates safety, and safety is the foundation of respect. People don't respect the person they're walking on eggshells around. They respect the person who is stable enough to tell them the truth. Let's use a micro scenario. Imagine you have a colleague who always says yes. Can you stay late? Yes. Can you cover my shift? Yes. Can you review this? Yes. After a while, they start to feel like a resource. You don't even think about whether you're imposing. You just ask. Now, imagine another colleague. They say, I can stay late tonight, but I'll need to leave early tomorrow to balance it. Or, I can review it, but I'll need a couple of hours. Do you ask them frivolously? No. You think twice. You respect their time. The first person is kind, but they're also invisible. The second person is also kind, they're helping, but they're also seen. But here's where it gets deeper, and this is the part that's uncomfortable to admit. Sometimes, when people test boundaries, they're not doing it consciously. They're not evil. They're just probing. The human brain is constantly trying to determine the limits of a relationship. It's asking, what can I get away with? And if you never show them the limit, the brain assumes the limit doesn't exist. This is where kindness without boundaries starts to backfire in a way we don't expect. You think you're building trust. But without a boundary, trust never has to be earned. Trust requires risk. When someone respects your no, they build a bridge between you. When there is no no, there's no opportunity for them to demonstrate that they respect you. Here's a metaphor. Imagine a lock on a door. A lock isn't there because you don't trust people. It's there so people can prove they're trustworthy by not breaking in. If you leave the door wide open all the time, you never find out who would have walked in without permission. And more importantly, you never give the people you love the chance to show you that they respect your space. Boundaries are the lock, and respect is the choice to honor it. Let's look at the psychology of the person receiving the kindness. When you give and give without asking for anything in return, you create an imbalance. And the human mind hates imbalance. It creates a state called cognitive dissonance. The person receiving feels a subconscious discomfort. They feel like they owe you. And because they can't repay you, you won't let them. They have two choices. They can either respect you more, or they can devalue you. And here's the painful truth. The brain often takes the easier path. It's easier to convince yourself that the person giving doesn't deserve respect than it is to confront the guilt of being in debt to them. This is why the nicest person in the office is often the one people gossip about, or why the friend who always pays gets taken for granted. The psychological pressure of unreciprocated kindness pushes people to rationalize their behavior by lowering their opinion of the giver. They're just a pushover. They don't really mind. They like doing it. These are just stories the mind tells itself to resolve the discomfort of taking without giving. Boundaries fix this. When you say, I'm happy to help, but I need X in return, you close the loop. The relationship becomes balanced. There's no debt. There's no guilt. And because there's no guilt, there's no need for the other person to devalue you to feel okay. Now, we have to talk about control. Because if you're listening to this, you might be thinking, so I just need to be firm, just need to be the person who says no. But there's a trap here too. If you set boundaries to control how people see you, if you're doing it to manipulate their respect, they'll feel it. People are remarkably sensitive to authenticity. They can sense when a boundary is a genuine expression of self-worth and when it's a performance meant to project power. The paradox is that real boundaries are selfish. They exist to protect you. And ironically, that selfishness is what makes them respectable. When you set a boundary because you genuinely value your own peace, your own time, your own energy, people respect that. They don't respect the boundary because it's a clever tactic. They respect it because it's honest. It's a signal that you know who you are and what you need. This is the hidden layer. Boundaries don't just command respect, they reveal self-respect. And self-respect is contagious. It tells other people how they should treat you. Let's go back to that moment we started with. The meeting, the conversation, the interruption. The kind person let the interruption slide. They were being nice. But they lost the moment. They lost the chance to be heard. The person with boundaries held the space. They didn't yell. They didn't shame the interrupter. They simply made it clear that they weren't done. And because of that, everyone listened. Here's what we miss. Kindness and boundaries aren't opposites. They're partners. Boundaries don't kill kindness. They protect it. They ensure that when you do give, it means something. They ensure that your kindness isn't taken for granted because it's not available to everyone all the time at your expense. When you say no to something, you're not being unkind. You're preserving the energy that allows you to say yes, fully, genuinely, without resentment. People don't respect boundaries because they want to be controlled. They respect them because they recognize a person who knows their own worth. And in a world full of people who are afraid to ask for what they need, that clarity is rare. It's magnetic. It's trustworthy. Here's something worth sitting with. What if the reason some people don't respect you has nothing to do with how kind you are, and everything to do with the fact that you've never shown them where the door is? If you never close it, how can anyone prove they respect it being closed? Think about the last time you said yes when you wanted to say no. Who were you protecting? And what did you lose in the process?